How do you differentiate between a shiny object and an opportunity?
Is this going to serve my larger objective?
Right.
Is this connected to the North Star? And then if it does seem like an amazing opportunity, how can I do that exploration that doesn't take away from the other things that we're doing to get to that vision?
Well, Jen and Ryden, it's been lovely to get to know you, and specifically so because you emphasize on the need to help people, achieve their truest, fullest self. So it's great to have you on. Thanks for taking the time.
Great to
Thank
be
you.
here.
So, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and how did you two come about to build the Mycelorium and what does it do?
So my name's Ryden. Jen and I met almost 14 years ago, actually. She hired me straight out of school into a firm called Bridgewater Associates. There, I spent 6 years along her side as she kept growing and scaling throughout the organization. She kept pulling me along with her, and extremely grateful. And I know this podcast is called Women Who Build, and having a woman who inspires me and pulled me up with her, I'm extremely grateful for. So then after that 7 years, 6 years at Bridgewater, I wanted to do something in social impact. So I spent the next 6, 7 years of my life building my own incubator in Latin America and on a board, and spent 2 years in Kenya doing the same thing, helping base of the pyramid entrepreneurs start and grow their businesses. And then most recently, Jen and I reemerged as co-founders to help entrepreneurs that came out of the first fund that we used to be a part of.
So I'm Jen. I was at Bridgewater for about 15, 16 years. During that time, worked mainly for the founder, Ray, where he would drop me in different areas to either fix them, transform them, create them from scratch. So manage several areas, including facilities, finance, CSM marketing, trading, and then was the CEO of the investment departments for a while, and also got into coaching, helping different leaders, especially some of the women leaders in the departments. And so just became really passionate about helping people fulfill their potential. I then did an externship with Arianna Huffington, another amazing woman who has built so many amazing things. So I worked with her for a year and did some great projects with some other big companies and sort of was able to spread my wings outside of Bridgewater. And then after that, I worked with Melissa and Doug Bernstein from Melissa and Doug Toys. Awesome folks. And we built a company creating sensory engagement products for adults. And so we did that. And then after a stint there, connected back with Ryden and just, got sort of the, as you call it, startup bug, was just really passionate about helping founders. And I was coaching a bunch of different people and just, really had a passion to help folks build amazing things. It was actually always a dream I had when I was a kid. I wanted to be the CEO of a company that made amazing products and it solved world problems. So it was just funny reflecting on that the other day. And so that's what we're trying to build, a community of entrepreneurs, connecting them with a community of service providers, coaches, different executives, talent, and then also with funding. And
That's exciting. And then I think I'm very curious about, just the name of the fund. So in a world where we have funds called Bridgewater, Blackstone, BlackRock, what does the Mycelorium really mean? And would love to know that. And how did you come up with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it comes from actually the natural world mycelium, so fungi in the ground. And what it does, these little fibers connect all of the different things under the ground. So plants, trees, different organisms, and it can actually pull resources to and from different areas to help them grow. And so when we were thinking about the goal of what we were doing, we kind of connected to that, right? We're not building this huge company in the middle. We're really building the connection points between the different things that help the entrepreneurial ecosystem work. And so that's why we created the Mycelorium along those lines, to be able to be those connections, that network, that force that's able to connect the different resources together to make great ideas grow.
Right. And do you primarily operate in pre-seed, seed stages, or what does that look like?
I would say it will invest at that level, but we created a network that supplies all different types of companies with services. So we have a bunch of folks in our network who are Series A, Series B, larger companies. It also depends what services. So for example, we'll place talent in any company, right? And so we really have those services in the middle for really any size company, but where we feel that we can make the most alpha from an investment perspective is in those sort of younger companies.
Sorry, Ryden, go ahead.
And connecting back to the concept of the mycelorium of passing nutrients amongst different groups. For example, last week we had an event where we had 2 entrepreneurs from our community who have already IPO'd take their time, get on a fireside chat with us, and share their knowledge to people just starting out. So all across the range, sharing of quote unquote nutrients.
And I'm actually curious because traditionally venture capitalists or funds that actually invest in technology companies are obviously known to sort of bring the community together. And I think one of the reasons that people also get into private investing is because they want to have a direct impact into company building, and that cannot happen with the founders solely doing all the work. Of course, there's a community needed. So I'm actually curious, what is it that you found was missing maybe in the communities or in the talent or in the professionals, vendors, etc., that the current investment firms provide?
So I think many companies do this well. So we're not saying that we're doing something completely novel. I think the 2 things that we're finding is, one, we don't want to start at just when the company's a portfolio company of ours.
Right.
We want to bring the folks together before sort of we invest in them. And so we're kind of combining an incubator with a professional community, with these sort of consulting service provider groups, and then the investors as well. So we're really trying to kind of broaden the community and reach of what we're trying to do. And then hopefully a lot of those good ideas can come through, and we might be a venture studio at some point. We might, so we really left it open into the different things that we can get into, but the core thread that kind of pulls everything together is that connection, at least in the first community, to Bridgewater, right? So there's a shared language, shared values, shared experience that we're really bringing everyone together in the community, and then utilizing those connections to then push different ideas through. And so we actually open the community to all current and all ex-Bridgewater folks. So it's not just founders right now. And so really bringing that power of the community together to then help different things happen. It could be that there are coaching relationships that have nothing to do with startups. And so it's really forming that amazing community bond outside of the work that Bridgewater does to allow amazing things to happen. And we'll form different communities through time. This is the first one that we're trying because we're so connected to it. But that's sort of the differentiator with this. Versus some of the other funds who, again, do this very well. We're connected to the Zoogle community as well, and working with them on things. So there are, the ex-Palantir community as well. So there are many people that do this, and we're just trying to sort of put our mark on this one as well.
With that said, one thing that we did learn in our discovery process by asking entrepreneurs how their experience was with other funds is when they are fundraising, oftentimes it feels like it goes into a black hole where they're not getting feedback back of, okay, but why didn't I get funding? Where am I falling short? And Jen and I, in the concept of a lot of the Bridgewater values of transparency, truth, giving feedback, we are developing a system by which when you apply to our fund, you're going to be given a report of saying, here is where we think you're shining, here is where we think you are falling short, and here are resources to also help you then get to the part where we could fund you or another fund can fund you. That's still in the development process, but especially as we broaden our reach to people outside of the Bridgewater community, our vision is that anybody can apply and get this great, almost like a baseball card, an assessment sheet that says, here's why we said no, and here's what you can do about it.
And that's actually very exciting because I remember when I was in high school, that's exactly what our teachers used to do, right? And they were, of course, I mean, we were learning, and teachers were a large part of how we were learning, but I feel like had they not given the feedback to us, we wouldn't have improved at all. So it's really cool that
Exactly.
you're doing this. And since you mentioned Bridgewater community, I'm actually curious, do Bridgewater folks only start in the finance space because they've been exposed to financial services before, or what does that look like?
The people that work there.
Who, end up starting companies, founding
Oh.
companies outside of
Uh,
Bridgewater.
The people that go into Bridgewater were not necessarily investment professionals in the beginning, right? I majored in East Asian studies and Chinese language. One of the top CIO candidates or the in the investment committee was a botanist, right? So one of the great things about Bridgewater is they really took in folks from all different backgrounds and then taught them the things that they wanted them to know within that context. And so really you have folks from all different backgrounds doing amazing things. And really it's how the company works. And I think one of the powers of that is that they got people who think differently together to then come up with the best ideas and to discuss it together. So that's one reason, I think, because you lots of people with lots of different backgrounds. For example, Jim Comey, who was the FBI director, was there too. You get people all different places. Then in terms of what they create, we had an interesting conversation with Mario Schlosser from Oscar on Friday, where he was really describing that process of starting a company. And it can really start from many different ways. It can start from your background, or it can start from an idea someone else has, or it can start from really you just find a problem out in the world. So Joel was a technologist and he ended up making an ultrasound machine, for the whole body that you connect to your iPhone. Or Mario did both health insurance company as well as a gaming company, right? So you see these people who are just really talented and are able to sort of manage and build things no matter sort of what the content is specifically, and to get the experts in the room to be able to solve that. So it's been really interesting to see what they create. But as we have a lidocaine cream company, we have, different, lots of AI companies as well, but really all over the spectrum.
I think
Bridgewater does a really good job of teaching us how to think about thinking, and some of those management principles around, okay, how do you set a goal and design the people and processes to get to that goal, regardless of what that goal is. And so because that was taught to us in such a explicit, intentional way, you see the outcome of being able to apply it to anything.
Yeah, I mean, I hear or I read about Ray Dalio mentioning that a good company means or almost looks like a good jazz band playing together, is what I keep reading. Of course, I mean, I'm a big fan of Ray and have gone through most of the books that he has written. But I think investment thinking aside, I think just being in India, he has shaped a lot of us, through his books and through the way he thinks. And I think it's very exciting that you folks are implementing your learnings from Bridgewater into some of your investment processes, right? And as you clearly mentioned that there were people from diverse backgrounds, starting different kinds of companies that, or rather in sectors that they may not be related to. And similarly, like at Bridgewater, they were, they could come from, so for example, Jen, in your case, East Asian studies, but you were also running the investment engine at some point. So what is this one trait? Like, how do people know that this person would be successful in, maybe launching a company, or in your case, investing, right? And how did you know that you would be successful in running a community like the Mycelorium, and probably potentially in the future help maybe fund companies? How do you know? Like, what is this one ingredient? Or there could be many.
I don't think you ever know. I think one of those ingredients is this comfort with ambiguity because we don't know. However, one of the things that we are working on with principals, one of Ray Dalio's firms, is this: what are those core attributes that make a successful entrepreneur? And then using those as potential metrics to help pull other entrepreneurs from the pile, to use better or worse words. But some of the things that I think are core is this curiosity, a drive for excellence, being able to both see the bigger picture where you're going, but then not be scared to get into the most minute details. passion, ability to pivot, take feedback. These are some of the core ones. How about you, Jen? What ones would you add?
Yeah, so I would bring up two things. One, how we hire people at Bridgewater was a little bit flipped, at least in the past, than some other companies. So we valued or prioritized people's values, abilities, and then skills.
Oh, wow.
So we
That's
would really look and say, okay, do they have the values to be here? So are they open-minded and assertive at the same time? Are they able to give direct feedback? Are they able to take feedback and be coachable, etc.? So that values piece was first. Then it was ability. So what are they like? Are they conceptual? Are they detail oriented? Are they able to plan and visualize really well? So what is that person like? And what does the job require? And is there that click there? And then the skills were really last. So
right.
again, I'm not saying that that's the absolute best way to do it, but that was sort of what we did there, and really then said, okay, skills are very easy to learn.
Yeah.
Abilities are much harder to sort of develop, but you can develop them over time. And then values are really sort of the core of the person, that they're unlikely to change as much. So you kind of value it that way. Then I think with the companies that we're looking at, and I agree with what Ryden said in terms of what we look for. For myself personally, I think the things that enable me to kind of do these different things, that be in different companies. I managed a consumer product company when I had no idea how to manage a consumer product company. And it's really being able to be assertive and open-minded at the same time, understand what you don't know, and then find the best people who do know those things to be able to then fill those gaps in your knowledge. And I think we're doing the same thing also with our investment committee, right? We said, okay, what are we not as strong in? How can we go find the people that really know how to do this well, and then create the environment in which that they can really contribute in the best way to make great things happen. So I think if you have someone who's really has the basic values, abilities, and then has that thing about them that lets them pull other people together and really go past what their own abilities or skills are, then I think you have a really valuable person you can put in many different positions.
Absolutely. I think one thing that I'm actually curious about is that you mentioned that your advisors, your potential founders, etc., are, of course, like, you've started with Bridgewater, but how did you do you have any LPs in mind? I know it's very open-ended for now, but have you thought about how you will structure your LP side of things, and in terms of like I think for the audience as well, there will be multiple emerging fund managers who will be listening to this. So what is the level of independence that an LP, GP, or founder relationship should have? And does that matter at all? How if I start a fund tomorrow, how should I think about it?
Sure. So I think we're doing it slightly differently. So what we've done in terms of the investment pieces is built a syndicate. And we've allowed many different people to be in that. You don't have to have a connection to Bridgewater to invest. And so we kind of opened that up. And the reason we did that, but instead of starting a fund, right, because we will start a fund later, but we really wanted to do it per company to be intentional and really get our investment process down before we start sort of bringing on money that we then have to put to work. Right. So we have this syndicate of, various people from different places. Some are Bridgewater, some are, run their own VCs, kind of have a bunch of different investors at play in there. And then as we bring companies forward to invest in, they'll evaluate those deals. Hopefully we can get the way that we evaluate deals down so they trust that process and are able to really gain faith in what we're doing, and then build a fund from there. So it's very similar to what Luba is doing with the ex-Palantir community. Yeah. And so I spoke with her about that as well. I thought she did it in a very smart way. And we're trying to learn as much as we can from those folks. So that's kind of how I think about it there. And then we're not just thinking about what we invest in personally, but also being able to connect the companies that we have with lots of different investors. Right. And so connections with different VCs and different angels. And so we really look at the company overall and say, who would be the best people to be investors in that company? And it might not be us, and that's okay. So for example, there was one company I was speaking to, it's a mental health app for bipolar disorder. I think it's a great product. But when we were talking about investing in that company and who he would go after in terms of investors, I had the conversation with them. I think you should actually go towards family offices or angels, because the pressure that you're going to get from different types of investors are going to pull the values in an opposite way than what you're intending or what you really need for that company to be successful.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on what that is. And I think investor fit for companies, investor founder fit is really important, because if the incentives aren't aligned, it will go poorly. And so we really want to build a process where you actually align the incentives with the investor and the personalities, and how do we find the best advisors and people who can help that founder and that company grow. And it's not just if you have a checkbook.
Right.
So that's how I would think about.
And to share with the audience who may not know what a syndicate is a pool of investors that can come together and have one name on the entrepreneur's cap table. And what this enables is that many people can invest, sometimes check sizes as low as $1,000 US. So to that entrepreneur. And one of the other principles that we thought about of why start with a syndicate versus jump into a fund that I think could be helpful to people who might be thinking about starting their own fund is I'm a huge fan of the concept one minimal viable product at a time. Right. So when Jen and I were thinking of, right, do we just jump in and do the full raising of LPs, which may take a lot of time? Why not do the thing that can get us moving the fastest so we can learn and pivot the fastest? I think that's
absolutely, yeah,
my only two adds.
Right. And how is the investment process of a syndicate different from a typical investment firm? Are there any differences because you're clubbing different people together to form a syndicate or to form a single name that can go onto the cap table? Or does the syndicate, because I'm guessing that the syndicate would change, or the folks on your investment committee would change might change depending on their interest with every new company. So is the investment process different versus an investment firm, or?
Is that when you're an LP wanting to invest in a fund, you're really evaluating the fund's ability to source deals and choose which ones, and you're giving them money by and large upfront. For this one, what we're doing is we're coming to the investors deal by deal and saying, here is the deal on the table. Here was our investment process for this particular deal, transparency behind our logic, and then the investors can choose yes or no. So just by being part of our pool doesn't mean that they need to actually invest in each of one of those individual deals. I think that's the big difference. One is almost like a just-in-time investing. The other one is upfront.
Yeah, exactly. It comes all down to discretion. So who has the discretion to make the investments? And so right now we're leaving that up to the investors, that we're providing this process. We'll have the same investment committee for most of our deals, unless we need to bring in specific industry experts, depending on the company itself. And then, yes, it's all about who has discretion. So right now it's each individual investor can choose whether or not they want to go invest in that company through us.
Got it. And what does I would say personality management look like when there are so many individuals, maybe potentially different individuals in a different syndicate? What does that look like?
Luckily, a lot of the folks that we have in our syndicate, we know, right? So that's very helpful. So most of them are folks that we have worked with, that we know very deeply. I think the biggest personality thing to manage is between the investment committee, right? And I think we've chosen people who are very both like-minded and also different in their thinking enough to have a good discourse around the different deals. So we have folks that are founders, we have folks that have been in the VC world for a very long time. And so we have to have those different balances of personalities, of experiences, to hopefully be able to really evaluate a deal objectively and well. And so that's sort of the personality group that I think we manage. In terms of the investors and the syndicate, it's right now, at least, it's a little bit more disconnected. It's not that they are now fighting over and probing different pieces. It's more, they'll get the investment memo and they say, oh, do I believe in this or not? And then they kind of make that decision. So luckily, the way that we've set it up, it's not sort of as much of a back and forth or free for all in terms of like, oh, well, I want this question answered. I want this. It's a little bit different than that. So luckily it's a little bit more distributed. So yeah, that's what I would say for right now.
I actually have a question for you, Jen. You have an interesting background where you've coached both Arianna Huffington and Ray Dalio. So what have you learned from them about leadership and building enduring companies? And what traits do you think are common and different between them?
That's great. Yeah, and then also Melissa and Doug Bernstein too. So yeah, I've spent most of my career helping amazing leaders and billionaires make their dreams come true. So I've learned so much from each of them, and they are all different but very similar in different ways. So I would say the similarities are that they all have very strong convictions and visions for the future, right? They're able to say, we are going to get here and it is going to be amazing. And having that both optimism and realism at the same time has been really inspiring. So Ray saying like, we are going to systemize management, or we are systemizing the investment process. A lot of people would be naysayers or say it's never going to happen, or, you know, other people are doing it this way and making a lot of money right now. Why aren't we? You know, and he has that very strong vision that he's able to really drive towards, being open-minded and assertive at the same time, but really never losing sight of that North Star. I would say Arianna Huffington, same way. And she is just relentless in such a beautiful way. It's really inspiring to see. And I would say Melissa and Doug similarly as well. Doug on the business side. So really having a strong vision for what excellent supply chains look like, what excellent negotiation looks like. And he is so amazing at really keeping that North Star in every single conversation, right? And really sort of teaching those lessons over and over again in a good way, and applying the different cases to those principles. And I would say Melissa is just an absolute fantastic designer, right? She designs all of the products. And so she's a little bit of a different leader in that she comes from this place of just creativity and connection. And so it was really interesting to kind of see those different folks. I would say the one thing I want to bring about with Arianna is that she is such an amazing relationship builder. She is absolutely fantastic at it. So she meets you and she is able to make an immediate connection. She is able to really bond with you in a way that I've never seen it like she does. I mean, she's just absolutely spectacular at that. And I think that's really helped her in a B2B business where she is able to really make the connections and she follows up with them. And it's just amazing, amazing to watch. And then with Ray, I think his ability to really take each specific example and understand the learnings from each one and understand that how should he be thinking about things more broadly. So both on the investment side and the management side. So his principles, right? His management principles, his investment principles. And that was so powerful because you're then not having the conversation about a specific, you're having a conversation about how should we operate about these things in general. And so he would call them, everything's another one of those. And so even a trade, okay, I want to make this trade. Well, why do we want to make this trade? What do we have to believe to make that decision? And also the management decisions as well. So you want to hire someone. Great. What is the logic and what are you going through that would make you believe that you want to do that? And it was interesting. I was at a coaching conversation, a workshop with the founders of Instagram and Ray. And we were talking with them about what some of their special sauce is. And they said, well, you know, we pick the ideas that are great to go after. And Ray was like, oh, well, I can, you know, systemize that. And they were like, oh, like, you can't systemize that. Like that's our special thing. Like, we just know. And we had this amazing conversation where he was literally writing down what their logic was that they didn't even realize that had them evaluate these different ideas. And we started to basically systemize that. So it was really interesting to see how that process could be applied to many different things. And we're doing the same thing with how we evaluate startups, right? What are the questions? What'd you say?
Is he a good note taker?
Is he a good note taker? Yeah. He has good note takers. Working with him. If that's
Jen, Jen, I have a follow-up question for you
Yes.
on those leaders. So you said that one of the things that they all have in common is this ability to paint a crisp vision of their North Star and their future. We also talked about earlier in this podcast of the need to have a balance between being open-minded and assertive at the same time. So how have you seen those leaders both simultaneously have such a crisp vision, but
Yeah.
then also being open-minded to when they need to navigate to that vision?
That's a great question. I'll give an example from, let's see, from Lifelines. So I would say we started the company with a pretty strong vision of what we were trying to go after.
Yeah.
Along the way, pivoted many different times. And one of the things that Doug did really well, and Melissa as well, is we would have that North Star, but when we had data points that would say that we should pivot and change something, he was very quick to do that, right? And not afraid of the things that we would have to stop in order to do that. And
Right.
so, hey, we were building this certain thing. Nope, that's not going to work. Great, let's deprioritize that, take that off, repoint these people over here and go full steam there. So the ability to rigorously prioritize and pivot when necessary, even though keeping the North Star the North Star. And then there might be times when you say the North Star shouldn't be the North Star anymore, and you have to have that conversation too. But I think that ability and the diligence to do that is really important, right? Because if you lose sight of that, I mean, I was talking to a couple startup founders recently, and they came up with this, or we had the conversation about the shiny object, right? It's very easy to be influenced by different conversations, to sort of see all of the different things that you could do and really go after those shiny objects. And one of the folks was building, this mental health startup. And originally it was going to be for bipolar. And then he had conversations with different investors, and they're like, well, it should be for everybody, and he started going down that path. And that was basically the shiny object. So it's really understanding, again, having that vision and knowing what's a shiny object that you should go after and what's one that you should not go after. And the ability to do that over and over again in a really great way is really differentiating in terms of who succeeds and who doesn't. Because if you lose your vision, if you lose the prioritization of what you're doing, you'll get off track. And so you really need to go back to that North Star. Is that the same thing we're going after? Great. Is this thing going to serve that? If yes, go. If not, then leave it behind, even if folks are telling you that that you should go after it.
How do you differentiate between a shiny object and an opportunity? Because you might want to, you might think that, hey, this could potentially be a shiny object because it does not really lend to my vision yet. But what if nobody else has explored that shiny object, and which is why they're probably advising you, maybe like the good ones who really want to help are probably advising you against it because they're like, okay, this is another shiny object that you're going after, but then it might be an opportunity. You may never know. So how do you sort of, take a call?
Well, that's really difficult. And one of the biggest challenges of management, right, is being able to make the judgment calls that are correct. And so, I mean, just off the top of my head, the thing I would try to think about is, one, is this going to serve my larger objective?
Right.
Is this connected to the North Star? And then if it does seem like an amazing opportunity, how can I do that exploration that doesn't take away from the other things that we're doing to get to that vision? And so I would say, you have to make calculated calls. This could be something that we explore, but it has to be very clear. What does it look like if it's succeeding? And what does it look like if it's failing? And how much time and energy am I going to put into that to see if that is actually going to be something worthwhile or not? And so I think where the danger comes in is that people getting distracted by those things or going after them in not an explicit way where you're able to then measure and then make the call if it's not going the right way. I think one of the issues that people have is stopping things that they've already started to do, right? So if that's not something that is serving you, you need to stop. It's very hard for people to do that, especially when there might be people's jobs on the line for that, where they were hired for that, and they have to make those tough calls. And so just to summarize, I would think, is it serving your North Star? If not, is it a possible big enough opportunity to make that worth it?
Right.
And then how can you intentionally go after that in a time boxed or explicit way so that if it's not going the right way, you cut it off quickly.
Yeah.
And
Right.
an emotional trap that I saw happen a lot with the entrepreneurs inside my incubator is that one of, I think, the core questions that you should ask yourself, is it a shiny object or is it opportunity, is doing some internal reflections of why do you want to go after that shiny object? Because the trap is that oftentimes it's because you've hit something that's really hard in the thing that you are working on, and the shiny object seems easier. But it's not, it's almost never actually easier, because you're going to end up confronting the same type of thing around, great, it was really easy for the first month, and then you're gonna have to work through the hard details too. And so if you are, for the audience, if you are attracted to the shiny object, I agree with everything Jen said. And in addition, ask yourself, why is it that you're really called to it? Are you actually running away from doing the thing that's hard?
This is me choosing between cardio and strength training almost every day. Oh gosh. Ryden, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Why are you excited about entrepreneurship? And the accelerators that you ran. How has your past work really molded you into doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. I believe that entrepreneurs have one of the biggest levers and keys to improve the world. Yes, politics are important, but entrepreneurs in the more agile way have the ability to stare at the market, stare at their customers, and then meet a need and desire for that customer. So, yeah, 9 years ago, when I was reflecting on what do I want to do next with my life, I wanted to be a part of, it sounds so cheesy, but making the world a better place, making the world a place that I personally want to live in. And one day, especially if I have kids, that they also live in. And when I thought about, yeah, do I want to go into macroeconomic policy, which also would have been a reasonable thing post Bridgewater, given it's a macroeconomic fund, I decided, no, I want to help the people that I see have actually the biggest lever to changing the world. So that's why I'm attracted to entrepreneurship.
That's exciting. Jen, in an interview with Thrive Global, you spoke about how your mom's passing shaped you. So can you tell us more about, what did you learn through that experience, and how has it even shaped your personal or professional trajectory thus far?
Yeah, so just for the audience too, my mom had breast cancer and then also uterine cancer. And I think the big thing that it helped me realize is not to sweat the small stuff, right? And to really focus on the most important things, and that work is work, right? But your family, your self-care is really, really important. And if you're not doing that, everything will suffer. And so it really helped me to, reprioritize. I was getting stressed over little things. I was very worried about how I was showing up at work, the feedback I was getting, the different projects that, how they were going. So it helped me take a step back and do a couple of things. So one is really come to work with a more sense of calm. Which is interesting when you're going through a tragedy to come up more calm, but it was really because I was able to see things more from above them than being in them. And so really step back and say, okay, these things are happening. Great. These things are impacting me in this way. I'm having these feelings, but I am not these feelings. Right. And so being able to kind of get separation from that, I think, was really powerful, because it is so easy to be driven by a lot of the emotions and impacts that happen on a day-to-day basis, whether it's you get feedback or someone doesn't like something that you did, or whatever that is, and to be in that moment to react. And so it helped me to pause, not react, but respond. And so that was very powerful. And then it also helped me to prioritize my self-care and family more. I was so career driven. I was so sort of all about sort of achieving and everything like that, which is wonderful. And I still am. But it also made me prioritize my family at every moment with them in a much different way. And so that was very important. And self-care, I was definitely not prioritizing myself, as Ryden could probably um, talk about. So I think that those were really important. And then the other way it changed me is it helped me then do that for others. And
Right.
so it got me into sort of executive coaching, therapy, and really helping folks do this for themselves. And so I really this sort of changed my career in having me be very passionate about helping others through their own journeys, through self-reflection, and really being able to do that separation between reacting and responding. And to think about what are the internal mindsets and beliefs that are causing you to make those behaviors happen. And
Right.
so, like, for example, if someone wasn't comfortable giving feedback at Bridgewater, right? You could tell them, great, just do it. Like, get over it, give feedback, it will be fine. But actually, there's some mindset or belief that's causing them to not be able to do that. And that was the first time, it was right after my mom passed, that I really started researching that and helping them break through. It's probably that they value themselves bringing harmony or making other people happy, right? And so then if they feel in their mind, their subconscious, that if they give feedback, they're not going to do that. And that actually is then a threat to their value. And you actually get the same hormones going through your body in doing that and in doing something that goes against sort of the value that you think you bring to the world, as if there were a bear in the room to attack you. Same ones.
Wow.
Your body doesn't know the difference between a life and death situation and a situation where your value is being questioned or at risk.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I don't need to go too much more into that, but that was sort of some of the big changes that happened for me.
It's actually very exciting because I for the longest time, I did not prioritize self-care. And so, I had to unfortunately undergo a surgery because I was like, oh my God, I have to achieve this within the stipulated time, etc. Oh my God, I'm not achieving now, I'm a big loser and stuff like that. And so I started to prioritize, and I also realized specifically after COVID, just gotten closer to family as everyone else did. But I also still keep getting this thing where I'm like, okay, I'm probably not what I used to be, and I don't know if the previous version was better. I mean, I'm still the same, like I have the same ambition, but I do it differently. But I still keep questioning, hey, is this the right way to go about it? And I don't know if you had something similar, right? And even you, if you had something similar in your life, and how did you sort of manage that? And if not, like that's completely fine. Maybe it's just because like I've been sleeping more, and so I blame myself for sleeping more, and it's a very weird thing, maybe.
It's
Yeah,
not.
I went through a similar journey. I did, where when I was coming out of the corporate world and then getting to finally design my life and how I wanted, being an entrepreneur of my own incubator, there were these patterns and beliefs of, oh, if I'm not working really hard, meaning if I'm not sitting in front of my desk computer doing X number of meetings a day, I'm quote unquote failing. Or if I'm not stressed out, I must be doing something wrong. These were all limiting beliefs I had in my system. And then I realized, wait a second, I'm not a robot. And doing my own personal experiments, I realized if I just let myself work on the thing that feels the most right for my current mood, I end up doing so much more, so much faster.
Right.
So, for example, some days I'm feeling extremely extroverted and I want to go and network and build relationships. Some days I want to sit in front of my computer and do Excel formulas. If I force myself to do the extroverted on my introverted days or my introverted on the extroverted days, it's going to take me 10 times longer and I'm not going to do as good of a job. So instead of this more rigid, I must be on a certain schedule doing these certain things and I'm going to grip myself through it, but rather, how do I go with my own flow? I accomplish so much more, so much better, so much faster. So it's self-trust, I would say, is the core of that.
Right.
And I would say I absolutely have felt those things. It is something that you have a challenge of all the time, at least I do. I remember, around when I had my second child, I saw a bunch of my, college friends and stuff being CEOs and doing all these amazing things. And I got really jealous, and I have to admit that I got really down on myself that, I wasn't there and wasn't doing those types of things. And I had to really understand, well, why do I want that? Right? And why would I want to do that versus what I'm doing now? And so I think the question for you would be, if you, let's say, keep going down the path that you are right now, what are you worried about?
Right.
Right? Is it perception? Is it acceptance by family members? Is it like, what are you worried about that is going to happen? And then you'll get to that fear. So
Right.
what is that sort of deep down icky fear or worry that you're worried about?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's exciting. And I think now just going to some fun stuff, which is that you're both right now not in New York City, but of course, you like to be there. So what's your favorite spot in New York City and why? To do anything, like whatever comes to mind.
Oh, I have my answer. I haven't lived in New York now in 9 years. So maybe it doesn't exist anymore, but there's this improv comedy center called The Pit. I
Okay.
highly recommend it out. And one of the nights they have a group called like North Coast and they do rap improv. And it was always my favorite part of the city. I used to go every Saturday for 3 hours to take improv classes and then stay and watch the show and highly recommend it as a way to practice your creativity, get over your fears, just jump on, get comfortable with ambiguity, laugh. Highly recommend it. My
Wow.
favorite.
Exciting. Jen, what about you?
See, it's hard to pick one. I would think that my favorite thing to do, it would be to just go and explore, right? And to bring my kids and they each get to like choose one thing that they want to do or one place they want to go, and then to go to that place. So whether it's the slime factory or the Natural History Museum or a chocolate store, which one of my sons wanted to do last weekend, the Lego store. So really just sort of experiencing New York with them in a way that they can sort of appreciate and understand it.
Right.
And so I think my biggest joy is kind of seeing their joy in exploring that place. We love, the zoo and Central Park and, all of the normal things. But I think really just walking around, exploring, meeting new people, having new experiences, I think that's one of the best things the city gives you is that there's so much to do and so many amazing things to experience that like you could do something different every single day and it would be fantastic. So, what is yours?
I actually exactly like yours. I just like keep going to random stores. The other day I went to some store that was selling China crockery, and I was really amazed by the design. And so I just kept asking the shop owner as to, okay, where does this come from, etc., etc. Then I went to randomly the store that had fabrics from different countries. So one from Turkey, one from India. And then I was just like trying to compare costs because there was some Indian fabrics. I was like, no, 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 this is very expensive and stuff like that. So I actually got a business idea out of it. So I actually keep going to random stores and just checking them out because there's so much beauty around. And then I keep picking roses from a new florist almost every day.
Great.
But yeah, I mean, I would love to sort of know who would you like to recommend for the podcast next, both of you?
I have one, it was on my list to actually send to you, but it's this woman who is starting a company that helps basically menopausal women, right? There's a big gap in menopausal care. And so I was going to introduce you to anyway. So she's fantastic. And then we have a bunch of other amazing women entrepreneurs. So I'd have to sort of think through
Yeah.
that list, right? And did you have anyone off the top of your head?
Two come to mind. One is this woman who's leading the charge in the crypto blockchain space. So I know there's not that many women in that world. Her name is Nicole Maffio, and she has the business size. I think she would be amazing. And then on the other side of the spectrum, or completely different industry. There's someone who I modeled my incubator off of in Latin America, but she does it in East Africa, and her name's Amelia Phillips. Her organization is called the Somo Africa, and to date, they've created something like 15,000 jobs by helping micro entrepreneurs. Complete powerhouse of a human, and
That's
I
really
think both of those would be wonderful.
I have one other one.
yes.
Emily Poteet, she's on our investment committee and is also the CEO of Advocate, which is a company that's using AI to revolutionize the way that people can access disability care and the governmental programs. And she's a powerhouse of a woman as well, and is just building something amazing. It actually came from her family's experience and veterans with trying to access this care, and governmental programs. So I think she'll be a great person to talk to.
So is this for like specifically for people from a lower socioeconomic background, or like people across?
I think it's for everyone. I know that they have a focus on veterans, but then I believe that they're expanding. It's like Medicare, Medicaid, or in different Social Security things like that.
Yeah, would love to talk. But thank you so much for taking the time. I had a wonderful time just getting to know you. You're both doing some amazing work, and I really like the fact that you're using your learning from Bridgewater and other places and really implementing that into investment processes, because having worked or really built an investment firm, I just believe that a lot actually comes down to investment processes, or just like how you run the operations versus everything else. So really, really glad to have met both of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This has been great.
Yeah,
It's
thank
been
you.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.